So I'm Sammy Paul, and I'm here at MCM selling posters for some of the short films I've made. They include Rocks the Bleed, and Peter Wright, and Friend Like Me, and Blue Sushi.
A lot of the films have a very dark sentiment or very dark mentality to them. What draws you to doing sort of quite dark films?
I think, for me, I think there's something great about dark comedy. So I wouldn't say they're so dark to the point where they're sort of like horror or anything like that, but they definitely touch on sort of darker themes. I think I like combining darkness with comedy. And I think sometimes when you do something a little bit comedic, you kind of let people put their guard down a bit. And then if you then take it somewhere perhaps a little more poignant or a little more thought-provoking or a little darker, then people are kind of maybe either more receptive to it but less expecting it. It's kind of an interesting combination. So I think there's something to be said about sort of like bringing people in with the comedy and then at the end kind of giving them something to think about maybe, or taking it somewhere where it's a bit more tragic. I love bittersweet endings. I'm big on those. I think it's too neat if you kind of just end something completely happy. That's not to say that there aren't films that do that great. I would say that, for example, even one of my own films, Blue Sushi, has quite like an uplifting ending, and that's more to do with the subject matter. But I think there's something more thought-provoking perhaps, and it kind of, you realise that you have to do some of the work yourself if it's kind of talking about a particular subject. If you kind of don't leave people completely fulfilled, and you kind of leave them with like a slight sense of uncertainty or a little bit of darkness in there. So yeah, I'm a big fan of that. Like I love that when films manage to pull that off, so that's just something I try and aspire for myself.
You've been the writer and director for a lot of the films. Do you feel like that gives you a lot more creative freedom?
Yeah, I have yet to ever write something that someone else has directed. I don't think I've even ever directed something that someone else has completely written. I love kind of doing both. I think writing is my forte, but even when I write, I have a very clear idea of how I want it performed and kind of how I want it told. So I think it kind of just allows me to tell it exactly how I want it to be told. I think there are some very talented directors who I'd love to maybe work with one day and maybe sell them a script or something like that. But for now, it's like when something's your baby, or when something's you kind of sat on and developed, like you want it a certain way. And I think maybe I should let someone else try it one day, but for now it's just like I know how I want it so clearly that I'm just like, no, I want to direct this myself. I know how I imagine it.
Has there ever been any projects that you've started writing and then gone, no, that's a bad idea, or no, that's too dark? Has there ever been a project that you started but then decided not to finish?
I think I've never completely shut away an idea. I think ideas change all the time and they shift and they kind of go from one place to another over time, and so there's nothing where I've kind of gone, no, absolutely I can never touch that, that's awful, no way. Sometimes stuff has emerged and then I've not really liked the route I've gone down with it, so I've kind of put it to the back of the folder for a while and go on to something else, and then maybe I'll come back to it in a few months' time or a few years' time and kind of have a different play with it. So I try not to shut down anything, like 100%, but there's definitely been ideas that have kind of emerged and then I've not been as keen on them, so I kind of put them away again. So that's the closest I've maybe come to it, but I'm not against revisiting them.
What's it been like making films for YouTube? Because a lot of the money around YouTube is usually based around views and advertising. How much has that impacted the way that you make the films, or has impacted the way that the production has gone?
Not at all. Not even in the slightest. I don't try to make stuff that is YouTube-y. I would say that if anything, a lot of the stuff we've made is really like not the kind of stuff you'd think would be popular with a main YouTube audience. I think maybe the only exception to that, for example, something like Friend Like Me, I'd say the casting is quite YouTube-y. You've got some YouTubers in there to kind of some names attached to it, but that's more because for me Friend Like Me is quite a fun film, and like I wanted to kind of do that with some of my mates and stuff. But like something like Peter Wright, I would say is really not YouTube-y at all. Like I'd say if anything it kind of aims to fight that a little bit and be a little different. I think a lot of YouTube is if in its traditional form or in its kind of current form is a lot about sort of appealing to the masses and regular uploads, and I have no big problem with that whatsoever. But I think there's something quite exciting about making something that you kind of is just a real passion project, and you're kind of making it for you, and you're not really like looking to appeal massively to other people. You're just trying to get something that you yourself are just very happy with. And more often than not, you'll find that you share a sense of humor with a lot of people, and so if you make what's good for you, you'll find that someone else out there will go, do you know what, I find that funny as well, or I like that story as well, or those characters as well.
You said earlier that you had worked with many YouTubers, but many YouTubers like Tom Scar, for example. What has it been like trying to get collaborations or working with other YouTubers?
I think for me personally, I've been very lucky. The advice I give when looking for like collaboration and stuff is just kind of know where you're at, like know what your own level is currently. Bearing in mind, I think everyone improves over time. I think it's worth bearing in mind that, like, you know, if you are still at an earlier stage and you're making kind of simpler stuff, be aware of that, and be aware that if you try and get in contact with sort of like a A-lister movie star, you know, either in real world or of the YouTube world, that you might struggle a little bit. I think there's a much bigger merit in sort of finding people who are at a similar kind of level to you, who make similar kind of stuff to you, and work as a team and kind of grow as a team. For me, it's like I made sketches for a while, and then I got to go know a lot of other sketch makers, and then eventually they kind of came to me because they liked what I did. I mean, like Tom and I had not really ever properly met. I think we'd met casually once or twice, but then one day he kind of saw a sketch of mine and was just like, dude, I love you, like this is awesome, and like subscribe to me and follow me on Twitter and stuff. And like now he's like one of my best friends in the world, like, so it's one of those weird things where it's like he just kind of liked my stuff, I'd liked his stuff previously, and so we just kind of like, there was a mutual admiration in terms of what we made. And then the more I turned to film, kind of same things started happening in the world of film. You know, whether it's like a musician you really like or something. I've become very good friends with Tom Rosenthal, who's a musician who I adore. Like, I adore his music. Like, he's probably one of my most played artists. Yeah, I got to know him really well, and now I use quite a bit of his music in my films and stuff. And so I think it's just like, perhaps sometimes people try to go in with too much of like a networky attitude to these things, and they're kind of like, oh, you know, collaborate and all that kind of stuff. I think there's a much bigger merit in just trying to make the best stuff you can, and if people find it funny, they'll find it funny. And I know that's a bit optimistic, and I don't want to lie and sort of say, oh no, it's a complete meritocracy and everyone's sort of at the same pegging, but I think that quite sincerely, if you make good stuff and it gets seen by the kind of people who you think you'd share a sense of comedy with, then like they'll like it and hopefully find it and discover it and enjoy it. And I really do believe that. Like, I really think that still exists.
Is there any star or celebrity that you haven't worked with yet who you would like to work with?
I could answer that in a big way. I could be like Steven Spielberg, you know, like for example. On a smaller scale, I'd love to work with PJ again. I've worked with him once, Kick the PJ. I was in one of his short films once, very briefly. I'd love to do something with him again. In terms of like slightly bigger picture, goodness knows. I love Bo Burnham, but he's doing really good at the moment. Like, I think he's not really much of a YouTubey kind of folk, but like, I'd love to cast him in something. Like, I'd love to do a film with Bo Burnham, but that's like, you know, like that's kind of the like maybe one day. But I say this as someone who doesn't know him and has never met him or anything. So those are my three answers. Like, the lowest peg is like, PJ, we should work again, mate. Then it's Bo Burnham, you're awesome, and like we should do stuff. And then the third one is Steven Spielberg. That's the three. Those are the big three in my life.
If people want to watch your films or connect with you online, how should they do that?
So my YouTube channel is youtube.com/Sammy, S-A-M-M-Y. On there are most of my sketches, and I also have a playlist called Off Screen, which is more of the stuff that I've done off screen for. So that's a lot of the films, a lot of the stuff I've written or directed. But my main channel is mainly just like my sketches, essentially. So that's the place to go.
All right, thank you very much.
Amazing, thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers.